Welcome. Welcome to the MLK Convergence interview series, Pathways to Peace in the Ukraine. I'm Tezekaya Gabriel. I am the Executive Director of Pathways to Peace, the org, not the interview series. So Pathways to Peace has been conducting these interviews for a total of 7 days, beginning last Friday and ending today. And it's been in this Zoom room at this time. And I'm so grateful to see those of you who have come back to spend this hour with us. You are in for a treat. I am so honored and delighted that I'm here today with Nina Meyerhof. And Nina, there isn't another person I admire more. And I'll be giving a more formal introduction to Nina soon. But I want you to know that these interviews have been leading up to the beloved community convergence by Compassion Games. And that is beginning tomorrow and the following day, and leading up as well to the summit on the Ukraine. That will take place on February 27th through March 3rd and is hosted by Humanity Rising. So we hope that you'll be able to attend some or all of those really important sessions. So, goodness, Dr. Nina Meyerhof is with us. And Nina is the founder of Children of the Earth, One Humanity Institute, and House of Hope in Auschwitz, Poland. The title of Nina's interview today is Ukraine, a story of compassion to action, to inner reflection on how to achieve peace. And let me tell you more about Nina in her own words. Dr. Nina Meyerhof, founder of Children of Earth, a worldwide organization that empowers youth working for peace, and the establishment of the One Humanity Institute for Peace and Regeneration as a solutionarium located in Auschwitz, Poland. Nina's innovative work in peace and sustainability through educational methodologies has reached young people in over 100 countries and continues to grow. Nina co-authored the book Conscious Education, The Bridge to Freedom, developed a one-of-a-kind handbook entitled Pioneering Spiritual Activism. In addition, she has written several chapters addressing authentic education for several anthologies consisting of notable luminaries. The latest is Our Moment of Choice. Nina has received awards for her work, from the Mother Teresa Award to the Citizens Department of Peace Award to the International Educators Award, as well as the state of Vermont passed a resolution honoring her for her life's work in peace, the SAGE Award, and the top second for the Public Peace Prize. Recently, Nina was awarded the Global Leadership and Lifetime Award, as well as the Visioneer Lifetime Achievement Award as a heroine of humanity, and Jagel's annual award in the name of Nina Meyerhof. And of course, last year, the Pathways to Peace Lifetime Achievement Award as an exceptional woman of peace. So Nina, you have lived a life that some of us can only imagine. And it feels like you're only just beginning. And so I'd like you to take a little bit of time. And as I have said, to everyone coming into these interviews, I may prompt you with some questions, but really my goal is to have you tell us anything that you'd like us to know and to share anything that's on your heart. So perhaps to begin, Could you tell us just a little bit about your life, your pathway to peace in this lifetime? Because you have lived many lifetimes in this lifetime. Nina?
Well, thank you. And it's an honor to be here. And I recognize a face here and the sailboats behind. And I want to say I'm fortunate I'm old. That's why I got to do so many things. There's some advantage to being old at this point. And it's a reflection back into the past now to see what I put together, why I began, and where I went. I would say that I started working with young people because I had the strong feeling that they were the future, and that whatever I would do with them, if I could be a bridge into new thinking and like hold the past into the past so that they no longer imitated what their parents wanted, what society wanted, that gave them the opportunity to look at who are they, what do they really want, and how can they build systems that no longer reflect what has been. And I started as a special ed assistant and moved up to be the director of 10 schools. So that was, I'm the kind of person that swims to the middle and then, jumps out of the water. And so that's how my life went. And then I had a farm, and I invited young people from around the world to come together to look at who are they and how are they the same, not how are they different, because we were in the era of teaching tolerance, and I believed somehow tolerance was limiting the person from really being who they are. And if we could instead say we're all the same and we're united up here, then we trickle down and develop differences, layers of who we are on the external, from very simple, I'm a woman, to I'm a woman in America, I'm a Jewish American woman, etc. And what do those cultural impacts do to a human being? Because it's pretty obvious, that we're born a certain being, a soul presence, and then we develop layers as we interact with life. If I can have people, and I could do that with young people, older people, people my age, I always was emotionally sensitive to, and those buttons would go off. But children, youth, I felt safe, and I could see who they were and bring them to the table. So I started that. And then in about 1980s or so, I really started my spiritual path. And then at about 1990s, I'm thinking about it, that I got a call from the UN. I read a book by Robert Mueller. Yes, he was the Assistant Secretary General, and it was somehow moved me, and I had a dream. And he came and he spun around over me and he said, "You're ready to go to the UN now." And I went, okay. And then the next day I got a call and I went. yeah, it's a miracle. And that's probably my biggest lesson to anybody about a life, is a life can be a miracle if you let go of the props, and we're taught all these things that we're supposed to be doing. And if we can let go of that and allow to see what is being really offered to us, because you never know, and then trusting and having faith. And I know I was, and call it tested, but it's not tested, it's the way the universe works. I was being tested because I didn't have total faith, and the way you have faith is to let go and allow. So I started wandering. As I went to the UN, it opened up doors and doors. And I was thinking this morning, like some wonderful stories, like there was a group that came to the UN from Thailand, and I loved what they stood for. So I wrote them a letter telling them all the things I felt that were in common with us. So they invited me to Dhammakaya. I was the first Westerner that had ever been there. And now they have millions of followers. It's a giant like city of spiritual understanding in Thailand. And which led me to Lama Gangchen, who came to the UN at one time, and I saw him. Yeah. I had to meet him. And so I just did, that's the way it went. And so when I went to Thailand, they're Buddhist, but they're Pali, Theravada Buddhists. And they said, we want to bring Mahayana and Theravada together to compare and to understand Buddhism. Well, I only knew one Buddhist, and that was this Lama I met flying by. And I said, oh, I know somebody. And so they sent me to find him. And I'd heard that he was going to Nepal. So they put me on a plane to Nepal, and I got in a taxi, and I didn't know where I was going or what I was really looking for. But I just did it. For 2 days, I went around in a taxi. They paid for it. And then I found Lama Gangchen. And he was leading this big convergence, and I asked to meet with him, and I said, there's this abbot that wants to meet you. And he said, I can't. You see, I have this conference, and all his followers, disciples were there, etc. I said, I'm sorry, you have to come, because they told me and paid for my trip to get you. And he said, but I can't. The next morning he came downstairs and he said, okay, I'm coming. Yeah, so off we flew to Thailand, and they became brothers. I mean, I looked at them, and it was like they were talking on an inner plane. And Lama Gangchen always said, thank you, Nina, for bringing this together. Yeah, it was a marriage of Theravada and the other, and Mahayana Buddhism. But these are the ways my life has evolved. I'm trying to think educationally. One of the first big programs I did was in Ghana. And I had this idea in my head that if I could have young people from all different nations come together and see how we are one, then we could really make a difference in the world. So I invited and raised money for about 50 to 75 young people to come to Ghana. So you can imagine a girl from Japan wearing her thing, walking through the bushes in Ghana. It was outrageous, yeah. And it was the time of AIDS. So there were so many funerals and death pyres and endless, despair, like seeing children looking for food in the ground. It was a hard time. And then I had these 50 kids wearing their their natural costume. I don't like to use the word costume, native dress. Yeah, because costume sounds like it's just put on. And there they were up in this community. And then we went into the schools. And what I learned in the schools is that they were dominated by British people. And so they had learned to spank their children. But so I told them they don't have to do that anymore, that's not modern. And so they stopped. They said, oh, thank you. I did a big deal. I said, don't do it. That's the way life went for me. Yes. And I worked with a woman there named Chief Nana Apiedu. She was chief of her people. And I became a chief, and I became a queen mother. I mean, I didn't know. They wrapped me up in a dress, and they gave me things to drink and sent me down into where the ancestors live. I didn't know, I'd seen a lot of movies, so I didn't know what was going to happen to me, but I went with it. And now I have donated to me a house in that area, which means like a straw building. So you understand. A house is what it is. But Nana is very interesting. A quick story about her is her husband worked at the UN. He was ambassador. and he got killed in a peace mission. And as a result, she took on the role that her husband took, and she was head of women refugees from Liberia in Ghana, plus many other things. And one day she was driving in her car down to the town. She saw a truck overturned with children in it, and like they were all bloody and everything. So she insisted her driver stop and take these children to a hospital. Now the hospital said, we can't take those children. They're from another tribe. Nana said, I'm chief. You take those children in. I don't care where they're from. She was strong. And so the mothers from these children came to the hospital naturally. And then Nana decided to meet the chief of the other tribe. So after midnight at our house, when it's dark, because they couldn't legally get together, the chief came, and they have a translator called a linguist. So the linguist stands there, she talks to the linguist talks to the other linguist, and that linguist talks to the chief. And that's how the chiefs talk together. And she did a peace treaty about water, because the children had been sent out to steal water from her area. So she made a peace treaty. As a result of that treaty, many chiefs came from the whole country. And this is, she's called the peacemaker in Ghana. And this is the reason why Ghana doesn't have wars, because of Nana. And Nana is still alive. She's in her late 90s. And right now she's still in Ghana. And I took her to India with me. And yeah, I mean, we had many life experiences. We were with a Shri Sai Das Baba, which is another story. Shri Sai Das Baba saw himself as connected to Sai Baba and Shreddy Baba, the one in between, yeah? And he was to be the next person ahead. And Nana had many out-of-body experiences of past lives there. It was very, very interesting. And Sai Das Baba and I began to develop a relationship. And so we were planning a program. And so he and I traveled around the world. We got to Switzerland, and we did youth programs in Switzerland to parallel, what's that called? The World Economic Forum. So we called it the World Spiritual Forum. I worked with Sesto Castellano on that. And so Sai Das Baba and I worked together, and every Sunday he'd call me up, and he had a stick, and he would say, Nina, what have you done this week to make the program good? I go, okay. But yeah, he was a taskmaster, to say the least. But so I met them all, it's very interesting. But he had taken on the karma of one of his people, and had always advised me his life would end soon. And so I got a call. I felt a big thump in my heart. And then his assistant spoke to me and said he just died, which, we had a very close relationship. So, this is the way in Japan. I mean, I moved from country to country, always focused on giving voice to the young people. Then, I don't know where I am in terms of time.
Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Doesn't matter. Okay. So I ended up being in, after 20, 35 years of doing that, and I did one thing after another. The big thing was always about money and would I make it? But, one day I got an anonymous check for $30,000. How often does that happen in life, right? I needed it because I couldn't feed the kids anymore. And I was like, what do I do? Sell everything or what? And then I got this check coming. And I found out eventually who sent it to me. But I believe life can work that way if we choose to live that way. We've just been deprived of this opportunity because we're so afraid of stepping out of our zone, that's life, and believe me, it took me years and years not to be afraid, like to let go and say, whatever happens, happens. It's just a life. With chapters going around, it's not a straight line. Yeah. And I got to know who I was through this whole process. Yeah. And the more I am, the more outside it became, whatever it was. So I did this youth work everywhere in the world. From Kazakhstan to Japan to Nepal. I went to Nepal a lot of times. One of the boys that had worked with me, that I had like a brood. I was like Johnny Appleseed, and I had about 15 of them that stayed really close with me. And this one boy has now developed 27 schools in the hills of Nepal. Yeah, with girl students also, which is very unusual. And yeah, we just did so much. But I never knew what I was doing. So that, I just did whatever was in front of me. And I was one of those people that would build castles in the sand. So I never knew what castle I wanted to build. I had to at least focus down on something, So after doing all this, and I have millions of stories, of course.
I know, and I love it. I wish we had time for all of them. Sometime we will.
Someday, yeah. And they're my stories for me, and everybody has their story, right? But as one day I saw something from Auschwitz. Now, my parents were survivors of the Holocaust, and I knew how much it meant in their lives, but I was so busy with my life. And so I never took it in as fully as I have now about what it means to have that lineage, yes, because I read an article about 3 women taking the music that was played by women that were called survivors for the man that was running Auschwitz. He let them survive because every Friday night he wanted to hear the music, yeah? And so they took that music and played it in Berlin. And I thought that was fascinating. And so I wrote them, and anyway, they invited me to Auschwitz, and we brought a filmmaker there with us, and I have a film of it. But the most important part is having, like when I was in Africa and saw the slave castles, and where they hung up the Black people and put them in chains and everything. Yeah, terrible. Yeah, really terrible. But it didn't affect me as much as it affects American Black, African American young people, Black people, because they sometimes would faint when they saw this. And for me, it was a visual experience of caring for another. But when I went to Auschwitz, and that's why I'm bringing it up, that was my lineage. So I got to experience all the way into my cellular understanding that I had to heal something in my past so that I could be even freer to be a global citizen, because that's my goal in life, yes, to serve and be a global citizen. I don't see much else as important. But let me just say that whenever you choose something like that, you give up other things. It's not like you can have it all. So you have to realize it's not like tinkering around. It's like saying yes to your soul and saying, I'm here, I'll do what I can. So that's what I did. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
You wanted to ask something, and I'll tell about Auschwitz later, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we're winding down and about to go into in a few minutes our peace wave. And Nina, I honestly, everyone here is hungry for all of these stories. I know, just as I am, and I've had an opportunity to learn a few of those others, and we're going to touch on some of those after the Peace Wave. But before we go into the Peace Wave, a part of what we're doing with these 7 interviews is really honoring Avon Madison, our beloved co-founder. And I just want to say that you and Avon worked together in the
Yes.
early days, even before the International Day of Peace and the resolution through the UN. So
Avon and I, dragged around the world together, and I was always doing the events, and she was always focused on, we got to get an International Day of Peace. So every piece of paper she made me put down at the bottom in support of the International Day of Peace. And I said, okay, Avon, whatever you say, She was dogged.
Yes.
But we found I found a young man in Brazil, who was a street boy, and he was, I don't know, he was amazing. So I invited him to sleep in my room on the floor of a hotel. And then I took him to Europe with me, and Avon joined us, and she said, he's the eyes of a future leader. And so we supported him in being the voice for the International Day of Peace before it became a reality. Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know what happened to him. I saw him off and on through the years. He lived in different countries, and I think he went back to work with street kids also.
Wow. Wow.
Like
You are an amazing kind of person who embraces oneness and abundance on all levels. So thank you for what you've shared with us so far. So I'm going to move us into our Peace Wave. And you know about the Peace Wave because you were there through that formation. So the story that I know and have been told is that, the resolution was passed at the United Nations in 1981 to make the International Day of Peace. And then by the beginning of 1983, Avon and Robert Mueller, who you also raised the name of, who was the Assistant Secretary General of the UN, talked about the fact that nothing much was really happening around after the passage of the International Day of Peace resolution. And so they together, but mostly Avon, created the Peace Wave. And the Peace Wave was originally created to open the General Assembly at the UN. And because the United Nations was birthed in San Francisco, 12 noon in San Francisco was 3 p.m. in New York at the time that the General Assembly would be opened with the Peace Wave. And the Peace Wave, for those of you who haven't been with us or don't know, is really a moment of silence, just 1 minute of silence where we can stop at 12 noon in all time zones. And in whatever way is comfortable for us to embrace peace, whether that's to hold a vision of peace, whether that is to feel the energy of peace, whether that is to bring up an image of peace that works for you, that we take just 1 minute of silence and moment of peace every day, 12 noon in all time zones. So I'm going to set up by doing a little meditation, but please know, for those of you who are here, that you don't need to do this piece of it. You just need to have that minute of silence, moment of peace. So, but because I can, I'm going to set up a little meditation, and then we will move into that minute of silence. So I'd like you all to just kind of slow your breath, to breathe a little more slowly, and a little more deeply, and to really just relax into your chairs. Kind of set aside all the busyness of the day and other things you could be doing. And let's just for a while breathe together. The one breath, that one sacred breath. We all breathe. We're all connected through that breath. If it helps you to count, to slow your breath, it's 5 counts on the intake, 5 counts on the exhale. And if your mind wanders, that's okay. Just bring it back to that beautiful breath. And for just a little while, we're going to breathe together that breath of peace. And if it works for you and you've established a nice, comfortable pace for your breath, then you can turn your attention to the center of your chest, the seat of the heart. And you're going to bring that breath through that area of your chest, through that heart space, that sacred heart space. You can't do it wrong, so just relax into it. And as we breathe through that space, we see that beautiful heart energy. We see it in our mind's eye. We feel it, that love, that nurturance, that compassion, that gratitude, that kindness. We see and feel that heart energy. And with every breath, we feel our heart expanding, bringing all of that beautiful, loving, nurturing energy into all parts of our body, right down to the cellular level. We feel that love and that peace, that nurturance and compassion and kindness that is our own true nature. We feel that energy moving through us, loving and nurturing everything it touches. And now with that beautiful love and peace and compassion flowing through us, we're going to move into that beautiful minute of silence, moment of peace, the peace wave. And now we can bring all that beautiful energy back into this place and time, this sacred circle. And thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, all of you.
Yeah.
Beloved ones in this sacred circle. And so,
To a little story about the UN, okay?
yes, please tell.
Was this, I've been working on the spiritual forum, And the indigenous people came to the UN, and they were given space to address the UN, and Avon was with me then. And what happened was all the ambassadors left the room and only the indigenous people were left, right? It was very disrespectful, very
Okay.
disrespectful. But the head of the Hopi tribe, Thomas Bianca, spoke and he said, do not worry. All our ancestors are here with us to hear what we will say. In other words, so important to know that you're working with the visible and the invisible all the time. Yeah. So I just to
Yes.
tell that story, because at the UN for a minute of silence that we always took.
And I think it's clear, Nina, but I would love to just say it out loud and then have you respond in any way you choose, that who you are as a spiritual being has really been at the center of your work for peace.
Yeah.
And so when I say that, what comes to mind for you?
20 years of doing esoteric studies daily and journaling and being a good student. It's like I had to understand what was that about. You know, I gotten inspired and then I did seeking, and I did seeking everywhere, from, you know, gurus to Tibetan lamas to the 7 rays to whatever there was, until I found a place that I felt like home. And it was interesting because the Alice Bailey work for me was like a remembering. It wasn't like a learning, you know, and
Yes.
Aiden was part of that. We were together,
Mhm.
you know, that was our past, yeah, together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, we're going to, as you know, the title of the series of interviews that we've been about, and that is ending with this incredible interview with you, is really called The Pathway to Peace in Ukraine. And so we're going to shift a little bit our energy around how we as peace builders can respond to what's occurring, not only in the Ukraine, but in all of the world's conflicts. And I know that you've been actively engaged in that for a very long time. So I'm going to ask you, of course, about your work with Ukrainian immigrants in the House of Hope and all of that. But before that, I know you've had some defining moments in your work around bringing peace around war and through war zones. So does anything come to mind that you would share that was like, I don't know what to call it. I said a defining moment, but a highlight or a key learning or aha for you when it came to war and bringing a
Well,
message of peace?
recently, it was gonna sort of be my end of speaking, but I'll say now, recently I finally understood what I should be representing in terms of this war with Ukraine. And I've done a lot with it. I've been at the borders. I've worked with hundreds and thousands of women and their children. I got to tell the story a little bit.
Yes,
If you don't
yes,
mind.
please.
Okay. I spent the last 7 years connected to Auschwitz, looking at what were the lessons never learned and never forget, and how do you transpose that? And so we wanted to, and we still want to, create a city of hope. And I've spent 7 years. We have architectural designs. We have the valid piece of land. We've met with the prime minister's staff. We've met with the director of Auschwitz, the mayors, everybody. And they're all waiting for us to create this, which takes maybe $100 million. So not a pretty penny, yes. But in the process, we inherited a house from a Jewish survivor. When we met him in Tel Aviv, he said, the house is of the past, he lives in the present, and you are the future. And he donated the house. It's a bit of a wreck, but it's a house. And then we got another house, and then we got another house. So we're creating a campus there. And as you know, and working on it, and doing content and looking at what we can do with what we have. So we're always looking for more money, of course. But that led me, when I heard about the war in Ukraine, something went right into my heart. I have to do something. And so I wanted to tell the 9/11 story. I was at the UN that day. It was the International Day of Peace. The bell rang. We saw Kofi Annan coming down and then go back up. I saw the plane go into the building. I saw it travel down. And people started running and nobody knew where to go. And we went across the street to the hotel and I saw what was happening. And see, I'm fearless. I mean, I don't know why,
Yes,
but
you
I'm
are.
fearless. So I went right down to ground zero. Everybody was running towards the trains. I said to myself, this is a revolution and I'm ready to die. That's what was going on in my mind. So I took off my heels and my stockings and walked down there and dealt with the people and realized that nobody was looking at the children, the children of all these people that had died in the building. So I went on, and this is a shortened version, but I went on TV and I asked for stuffed animals, and a busload from Oklahoma, where we had been to work there, came in and we gave them out. And I saw how people would hold on to these bears as if that was their life story, because it was like a hug, a bear hug. And so the children and then the parents and everybody. So that led me to doing a bear hugs project, which I've done in Rwanda, Syria, Thailand. I met the princess. I had to practice 2 hours how to bow and curtsy, excuse me, 2 hours. And what did I get, But the sequel to that story is I saw the princess walking in Auschwitz, and I went up to her and I said, you remember me? I knew she never remembered me, but it didn't matter. I got to reconnect and I said, I'm here, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so I remembered the bears and the impact it had, and I felt I had to go to Ukraine. And this was before NGOs were involved, before the government had opened. It was the first week of war. And I called up 2 friends and asked them if they would go with me, and they agreed, and I got bears. And then I got more and more bears, and then we got about 1,500 bears, and we're handing out bears at the border as the women were coming with their knapsacks and their children and not knowing where they were going, where they're going to sleep. So that was pretty terrible to see. And these are 80% of the women in Ukraine have not been professional women. So that makes it different. They were housewives and they left their husbands, their brothers, everybody behind. And so they were really lost, really lost. So we had that building and we put up a GoFundMe. We raised enough money to convert the building into 9 apartments. We house 25 Ukrainians there right now even. And this is called the House of Hope. So what was the question originally?
It doesn't matter. It really
No, it
is.
was a good question. Oh, where is
It's really, yes.
peace? Yeah, because
Yes.
the most important thing that's happened to me just in the last week or two is Because I see the necessity, I see Zelensky as a world hero. Yes, I see him birthing something very important for all of us to gravitate towards. And I see Russia as the old school, and that's the new school, and they're clashing. Yes, but what it's doing is it's perpetuating war. And that's not the answer to resolving a conflict, right? So finally, it's dawned on me that personally, I need to advocate for ceasefire in Ukraine. And I don't think anybody is really doing that, you know?
Yeah.
You feel that, Tess? Yeah?
Yes, I get goosebumps all over. It's so right.
So I've started to say ceasefire in Ukraine, and I think we need to project that into the world more and more.
Yes.
Whether they're right or wrong doesn't matter. And you know, I work with a school in Ukraine, in Kiev, and I spoke to the principal the other day, and she said, "May peace prevail on earth." And then I said, "Ceasefire," and I could feel her release. Yes, ceasefire.
Yes.
So maybe through this call we can start to advocate.
Yes.
I'm going to make up little cards, and it's going to say, you know, we're a global community, blah blah blah, but in bold letters, ceasefire in Ukraine. You know,
yes,
and it means I still support them, but we gotta stop. Okay, so that's my pathway to peace.
Wow. In this moment,
In this
unfolding over the last few weeks, Nina, we are with you totally. You know that. So however we can step up and help get this message out and make it happen.
Okay.
The urgency is now, right? The urgency is now.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, for people not to be, you know, to feel the inspiration of the teddy bear experience, maybe we could show that very short video, because I think it'll give you the feeling of what it was like for us. And I think it's exciting.
Yes, I think so too. So, so while I'm pulling this up, tell us a little bit about some of the highlights some of the stories that come to mind for you as you've distributed these teddy bears.
I remember getting in a car that somebody offered us a ride and having 1,000 teddy bears all around me, you know, and hardly being able to breathe. But, you know, we had a lot of fun because we didn't know where we were sleeping, where we were eating, what we were doing. You know, we just went. I went. And I'd been in Poland before, obviously, working on this project. So it wasn't the end of the world. But I think what's interesting is there was a woman in wherever she was, Teddy Good Bears, and she wanted to send me 800 teddy bears that finally arrived in November, from August to November or something. And it was a fortune to send over. But we had the kids in Poland make cards that tell the kids in Ukraine how much they care about them. And it was in Polish, Ukrainian, and English. And we tied them around their necks. And there were convoys of trucks going to the orphanages. There are 30 orphanages in Ukraine. And we distributed the bears there. And so the orphans got the teddy bears and they can communicate with the kids in Poland. But what was even more interesting is some guy opened up the box, and it was from the United States, an organization, and he saw a card and he got in touch with me and I back in him. And he took videos of the kids opening and receiving the thing. So we saw the bears from getting them from America to getting the Polish kids to do it, getting them to Rotary, taking them on truckloads into Ukraine, and then the kids opening. I mean, that's a miracle, right?
It is.
I didn't do it. It was a miracle. That's all it was.
Yeah. Yes, it was. And so let's see if I can pull this video up now for us. Can you see?
So sweetie. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, let's
I don't
see.
know.
Move some things around here, so
This child was
can you
wrapped
see
in
in
his father's
here?
coat, crossing the border from Ukraine to Poland. The grandmother
What's the
wanting to
black
ensure
line
that her
there?
grandson had something of his father's in case he never saw him again. Our journey to Poland started way before we even got there, at the local Staples in Vermont, where we received donations of boxes of school supplies, crayons, and coloring books for the kids. As well, we'd like to thank the Vermont Teddy Bear Company for graciously donating the Hero Bear teddy bears, which were absolutely perfect for these Ukrainian kids to receive. Nina, Meyerhof, and myself made our way to Poland in just a couple of days from the moment Nina texted and said, "Hey, let's go and help," to the minute that we hopped onto the plane. We had very little time, but somehow managed to rally an army of people to be able to help us to get the supplies that we needed to take with us to Poland. And here we are, we've arrived in Krakow. We have some of our suitcases with us, filled and stuffed with teddy bears and school supplies. Now, we possibly couldn't carry everything, so we needed to make sure that we could support the local economy of Poland, who were so graciously and generously helping out the Ukrainians. We wanted to buy local, so we bought hundreds of teddy bears from this beautiful store in Krakow. I couldn't believe the selection. They were gorgeous. Our first stop was to make it to the border of Medyka, on the border of Poland and Ukraine, where we were able to see hundreds and thousands of people lined up, waiting to be processed as they entered into Poland. A team of us got together and started meeting people, connecting, and handing out teddy bears. The teddy bears for us were an opportunity to connect with kids and their moms in a safe way. Plus, it brought smiles to their faces. From the border, we headed to the town of Oświęcim, or Auschwitz. Now, many of us, when we think of Auschwitz, think of the concentration camp, but outside of that is a beautiful old town of Oświęcim. And here, the people so welcomely opened their arms for people to be able to come and stay. Our work from there led us back to the Refugee and Processing Center near the border once again in Medyka, where we met and saw hundreds of people staying in the shelters. We also had the opportunity to go to the train station. And here was a different kind of hope. Unlike the border, where people looked so tired and just shell-shocked coming across, the train station was a place of hope. Here, people were getting on trains to go somewhere, and the kids were super excited to receive their teddy bears. We also had the opportunity, from going to the train station and seeing these wonderful, happy, smiley kids, to go back and work once again at the border. We traveled back and forth numerous times with all of our donations, and shelter upon shelter, we just saw more and more people arriving every single day. Our last few days took us to Warsaw, Poland, where we spent some time at a shelter that had at least 4,000 people staying there. And we had 600 teddy bears that day to give out, and there was at least that many kids who received them. The kids here were in a happy space, although the moms looked very tired. And one of the things that we heard over and over again from people was that, where will I go next? The shelters aren't a place to stay. The shelters aren't a place for you to raise your children, and it's certainly not a place to stay safe. And so this propelled us to go back to Oświęcim, where the One Humanity Institute, which Nina heads up, owns 2 buildings. One of them was badly bombed during World War II, but the other, an old bakery, had 9 apartments. So with the call of volunteers and another one of our fellow hope makers, started project managing and getting the local high school kids involved in the cleanup and the beginnings of the demolish, so that we could hire the contractors and get the contractors ready to refurbish these buildings. The 9 apartments will allow for up to 25 people to be able to stay and live for an extended period of time until it is safe to go back home. I'm back home now, and as I reflect upon my time in Poland, I realize what a blessing it was to be there at the beginning of this war. It's because at that point in time, it was just people. It was just the people of Poland and the volunteers that had come to help. There wasn't any NGOs, there wasn't any government set up yet. It was just people coming to help, and we got to be a part of that, which I am truly blessed and honored.
And that's it. Thank you. But it gives you the feeling of what we did. Yeah.
Thank you, Nina.
So
And
we
go
had
ahead.
We have 25 people living there now. They love it there, and it's beautiful. But we need funds for heating because it's tripled the cost. It's like, I don't know, 6,000 PLN a month. I mean, it's astronomical. So we're going to start a new GoFundMe and trying to raise the money. So whoever you know that cares, none of it goes in our pocket. It all goes for supporting these people. And we have a peace lab in honor of Phil Helmlich there also.
Yes.
Yeah, that I
Yes.
should mention, because that's a big thing. That's a friend of ours who passed recently. So we raised money and his family helped us, and we made a peace lab of 15 computers so the young people can communicate still with their homes and schools and get work from home, etc. Because they don't really want to go to the Polish schools. It's a different language, etc.
Yes.
Okay.
So Nina, oh my goodness, you are just such an amazing human being and an amazing inspiration. Your work just brings it all home for all of us. And so I know that everyone here in this sacred circle is going to leave inspired by your stories and your words, and knowing that there's just so much more. I am wondering if you can
I'm going to put the
yes, in
yeah.
the chat
Mhm.
that I have your contact information in the chat, but if you could put in anything for the GoFundMe or whatever,
Yeah.
if people wish to contribute,
Sure.
that would be wonderful.
Mhm.
And so while you're doing that, there's lots of really fun stuff in the chat for you, Nina. People
Yeah.
talking about getting the message, thanking you, and getting the message out about the ceasefire. And so we're a small but powerful group here. Yay. And so we want everyone in the sacred circle to know that they are a pathway to peace. And you are so amazing at always bringing it back to that, Nina, that always bringing it back to others that have contributed mightily to you and to your message of peace, and continue to work with you around that. So my heart is just full. I'm just so appreciative of you. And so thank you for being with us. And we have a couple of other folks who we've interviewed have said, oh, I feel like I just scratched the surface. So I think we're going to put together a deeper dive presentation, a group of our beloveds coming together to take an even deeper dive, and so that you can tell more of those amazing stories, and also more of calling us all into action. So we are going to close with Dot Mavers. Oh yes, go ahead.
I just want to make sure, can you send me the chat so I can read it later?
Oh, I absolutely can. Yes,
Okay.
I promise I'll do that as soon as
Don't
we're
have to
done.
look at it now.
Yeah. And
Thank
so Dot Maver was influential in requesting that we do this series on pathways to peace in the Ukraine. And so while Dot couldn't be with us, we've been honoring her by bringing her voice in through the Global Silent Minute. And yesterday I said, I keep saying golden Global Silent Minute. So that's my version of it, I guess. But we are going to raise Dot's voice and to close with the Global Silent Minute.
So do you know that Dot and I wrote a book together? Huh.
I did not know that.
And do you know that she moved to Vermont as a result of our friendship, and that grew? Yeah, we all have intertwining histories. Yes,
We do. And we're so grateful for those histories, as well as creating new connections as we move forward in our work together to build peace. So everyone counts. So I'm going to bring in the voice of our dear friend Dot. And Dot invites you to participate in the daily practice of a global silent minute, the exact same minute everywhere, calibrated to 9 p.m. GMT for global cooperation, peace, and freedom. And now we will close with a global silent minute, linking our hearts across distance, both sides of the veil, to invoke the spirit of peace as we hold the intention of the healing of nations, both within and between, for global cooperation, peace, and freedom, as we usher in the era of peace and put an end to all war and suffering. Let us prepare to enter the silence together. We take a deep breath and activate the spirit of peace within our own hearts. And we link our fiery hearts across distance. Now we take another moment and we invite all those on the other side of the veil to cooperate with us. We will go into the silence now, distributing our intention for everlasting peace. Thank you, Nina, beloved Nina, for being here with us. Thank you for your courage, your boldness, your meeting every opportunity.
Thank you.
And so thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to our beloved audience. We're so grateful that you've been here with us. And as we say at Pathways to Peace, please know you are a pathway to peace, regardless of where you've been, regardless from where you've come from, what you are doing today and where you are. Please know you are a pathway to peace. Thank you.
Thank you.